I'm not sure people actually have a correct understanding of what a phone does to you and how it is used against you. The typical line, of course, is that I'm not doing anything nefarious. I have nothing to hide. I'm going to state this up front. If this is what you think, then you likely have no sucking idea about what your phone is doing. I want to frame your understanding of the phone tracking problem, and I think the conclusion will be that this is something to be seriously concerned about. There are phone alternatives that do not do what I will describe here, but very few know about them, and I will talk about them at the end. Stay right there. What I will talk about today are the features of a standard smartphone, or what I generally call a normie phone, which are your iPhones and Google Androids. The very first thing that distinguishes a normie phone is the fact that you always identify yourself to either Apple, Google, or in the case of Apple, to both. This is what I call the identity problem. There's the Apple ID that you have to supply to your iOS phone, and of course, there's the Google ID as well, which will tie it to the phone, whether it's an iPhone or Google Android. There are other permanent and unique identifiers on the phone which will stick with you because Apple and Google can read these. Examples of these identifiers are the phone IMSI, IMEI, and even MAC addresses. So the phone itself has a clear and indelible identity both in connection with you and the specific device. Now, to make sure that everything you do is tied up together with this identity, your phone is used by Google and Apple as your two-factor authentication device. In other words, if they want to verify that it is you, they send you a text or notification on your phone. Sounds pretty benign, but what it actually does is tie your phone identity to the platform. This means that even if you're on a laptop, the fact that your phone is tied to the account allows Google and Apple to track your phone regardless of what kind of device you're currently using. For example, your phone is always on so they can check if you're in the same area. This tracking technique is referred to as cross-device tracking. Now, to expand your knowledge of the internet, practically every website you visit has a Google code in it called Google Analytics. Every website willingly puts in Google Analytics code from Google because without it, a website will not be searchable on Google search. However, this same Google code performs a separate function. Not only does it do analytics for the website, it also analyzes the person going to the website and tracks that using a Google ID. In addition, every Google search you do for any topic is matched to your Google ID. Any click on YouTube is referenced against your Google ID. Google also has the ability to track every click on the phone from the browser or any app because every internet URL is passed through a URL checker called Google Safety Net. Additionally, Google and Apple can also track every domain you visit. Google can intercept your DNS traffic using the private DNS feature on Android. Apple uses the iCloud Private Relay to do the same thing. So basically, here's where we are to start. Your phone is clearly identified and used to match you to any activity on the internet. Now let's talk about location tracking, which will add another data point to anything else you do on the internet. Apple and Google devices have such extreme forms of location tracking. On this front, Apple is worse. Now what I will explain can get complicated, but if you get confused by the technology I'm describing, don't worry. The main point is that on these devices I'm explaining, there is no escape. You cannot hide. As you expect, there is a GPS chip on your phone. Most of you think this chip just connects directly to satellites and a location is determined immediately. But on a phone, it doesn't work that way. The problem is that there's a lot of satellites around the Earth and the GPS chip needs to know your rough location in order to quickly find those satellites. Otherwise, it takes up to 3 minutes to acquire a satellite fix. The patented technology for a speedy GPS is called supple, and the patent is owned by Google, so GPS needs to be provided a starting location. This is true of every normie phone, whether Apple or Google. When you turn it on or when it needs to acquire GPS satellites, it has to do a cell tower triangulation, which gives it a rough position, and then that data is sent to supple.google.com. The significance of this is that every standard phone in the world, and even some specialized phones that have not considered this, are actually sending a cell tower-based location to Google. This data includes phone identity data like IMEI and IMSI, in case you're wondering, as well as an IP address. And this cannot be turned off on a normie phone. So this is a threat that is constant. GPS is more precise than cell tower triangulation, so GPS is the main location source. There's actually no way to turn GPS off directly on any phone. However, GPS does not work indoors, so another technology is needed for indoor use. The indoor location technology is referred to as an NLP, or Network Location Provider. When a device cannot acquire a GPS signal, it will then call home to HQ, Apple or Google, to get an alternate position fix, and this positioning is done by Wi-Fi Triangulation. This is called the NLP service. It works like this. Your phone scans the Wi-Fi networks near you. These Wi-Fi routers emit a MAC address identifier. All that the phone has to do is to send the MAC address and the relative signal strength of the Wi-Fi routers around you, and the NLP provider can then supply an accurate position, typically within 6 feet. This is because the NLP has a database of every Wi-Fi router in existence and where it is located. Each OS provides their own NLP service. This works in conjunction with the GPS. This is the problem part. When the GPS is active, the phone does a different duty. It works in reverse as far as Wi-Fi triangulation is concerned. It supplies the location of Wi-Fi routers to Apple and Google constantly. They are used to populate the NLP database. That way, when you go indoors, the Wi-Fi triangulation tracking can take over. Again, just to make this clear, your phone is constantly scanning the Wi-Fi networks, and when there's a GPS signal, it is sending that location data with Wi-Fi identities. This process is sometimes called Wi-Fi scanning. Now, Apple goes a step further. Apple decided that iPhones need to talk to each other on Bluetooth using Bluetooth Low Energy, or BLE. This is referred to as the Apple Mesh Network, which is the main infrastructure of the AirTag. So pulses of data are passed between iPhones at all times while searching for AirTags. If an AirTag is found within a couple of 100 feet from an iPhone, the phones report their position to Apple in relation to the AirTag. And this is precise, including distance and direction to the AirTag. So multiple iPhones would really be tracked together. As an example, if one person had an AirTag in a protest or demonstration, then clearly all the iPhones there will go into a location reporting frenzy, identifying that AirTag and thereby also sending their exact location. But beyond that, if you decide to turn off your iPhone, it then turns on AirTag mode and it behaves like an AirTag, reporting its own location to Apple via other iPhones. This goes even further. Another method of Bluetooth signaling occurs with both iPhones and Google Androids, so it detects the presence of other phones in the area based on the Bluetooth identifiers called MAC addresses. This was used to perform contact tracing. Whether or not you use a contact tracing app, this tracking occurs at the operating system level. On iPhones, it's a lot worse. I told you that your phone does Wi-Fi triangulation, AirTag tracking, locates Wi-Fi routers and so on, but in the middle of this process, it does more. Since the phone knows its location at all times, it self-reports itself to Apple with Find My Phone. Some of you think that Find My Phone is enabled only by the user. You would be so incorrect here. A phone is sending not just its location, but a unique serial number to Apple constantly using the techniques I just mentioned. You cannot stop this. The user simply connects that serial number to their iCloud account. So basically, even an iPhone that is unregistered with iCloud is still tracking because the serial number is still being sent with location to the Find My Phone system. This is true of every iPhone in the Apple Store. Additionally, every iPhone still in a box at the Apple Store is an AirTag, so they're being tracked based on the Bluetooth pulses sent out. Now, some of you will counter me and say that you've turned off location tracking on your phone in some way using permissions or something in settings for your phone, and you believe this actually gives you privacy. Please don't give yourself this foolish notion. Those permissions apply to third-party apps. Yes, you can deny any third-party app access to locations directly. That is correct. Google and Apple can truly keep your location from those apps. But there is nothing to stop Google and Apple from knowing your location. So let me summarize this location tracking morass here. What I'm telling you is that if you have a normie phone, there is no escape to exact location tracking. That can be done to you, and this becomes part of the data collected about you. Now let's complete the data collection picture. The next aspect is called telemetry. A more precise record of what you do on your mobile device is tracked. Apple and Google will both report your app usage and even how much internet traffic is consumed by each app. Apple just makes this telemetry a part of iCloud, while Google calls the service Firebase. So they not only know if you're using the phone, but they know immediately what you're using on your phone. When your iPhone tells you that you are 5 minutes from your destination, even when you did not give it a destination, or that you're 100 feet from your car, though you did not tell it where your car is, just understand that someone else knows that. Don't be naive to think that this information is somehow stored on the phone. These are all centralized by Apple and Google. What happens next is already proven to be quite true, and I discussed this in a suppressed video a couple of years ago. I will link the original video so you can check the names of the companies involved. But in this video, I will just speak generally. Trust me that this is factual. Using your clicks on the internet, your search results on Google Search, your DNS history, your activities are tracked and deeply profiled. Alphabet has a division discussed in a separate video that's deeply funded and provided with all the data on Google that allows each person to be recorded in a database and tracked according to identified groups of users called cohorts. The cohorts are organized based on certain characteristics. You may be in a cohort for demographic classifications like age and financial status, for example. But there will be a cohort even for specific beliefs. It is Google's plan that even advertising will be fed to users in the future based on what cohorts they belong to. They expect to sell access to these cohort groups. As far as the source of data for the cohort assignments, just from Google search alone, Google has categorized people based on what they search for. Google has decided that they want to be an activist organization. And in their determination, they decided that some of these cohort categories require some targeted response. They have established cohorts for liberal versus conservative versus moderate. Likely many layers of this. They have specific cohorts for belief systems. For example, they have tracked people who are anti-vax, anti-Hillary, QAnon, incels, climate change deniers, white supremacists, right-wing election deniers, anti-woke parents, anti-LGBT, Muslim extremists, gun enthusiasts, to name a few. Google has the means to track any kind of belief system, but they decided that they will actively target what they consider to be right-wing extremists. They call this group violent right-wing extremists. I don't know how you can tell if someone is violent just from Google searches, but this is their labeling. And by the way, I do not see any kind of categorization of left-wing violent extremists. Then they partnered with a company in London and decided to take this data to actually move to the next phase of the project, and that is to manipulate the Google search results for the targeted population. This way, the search results always shows an opposite point of view at the top of the search results for these targeted individuals, and also modifying the rest of the search results. There's an actual map based on Google Analytics data that actually can pinpoint the exact location of people with specific beliefs. So not only are each of you assigned to cohorts, you are clearly identified and mapped. Someone could knock at your door. Something that would be quite interesting to see used by some oppressive government. The public release of these maps have been removed, but some examples of these maps were captured in my original video, and I just chose some rural town in Texas to highlight people who were anti-vax. Maybe Google removed them because of what I revealed in my video. By the way, this is just one project to manipulate search results. There are other projects, including manipulating comments in platforms like ZocBook and the New York Times. In other words, they are influence projects. To frame this more clearly, your identity from your phones and your data, which includes your internet actions and locations, are now weaponized. These big tech companies can now use this data to target you. This should answer the question of why this is not just about caring if you have something to hide. If mass numbers of the population are identified and sorted by belief, what could someone do to those people who believe something against the current government in power? Just look back in history and see what some corrupt leader could do to this information. This to me is the greatest threat in modern times. It is a direct threat to freedom. Can we counter this? The only way I know currently to counter this is to change the mobile phones that we rely on every day. In my deep desire to try to change this extremely dangerous direction, I've been telling everyone over the years to move to a non-normie phone that is not beholden to Google or Apple. We have manufactured one of these phones, and it's the Brax 2 privacy phone. There are other phones that fall into this category, and they are generally what I call de-Google phones. What makes de-Google phones like a Brax 2 unique is that the scary elements of the phone have been eliminated. These phones do not have an identity. You never log in with an Apple ID or Google ID. Also, there's no central HQ that has access to data like the IMEI or other unique identifiers. The OS is open source, so no nefarious actions can exist. Second, these phones block location tracking unless permission is granted. The background tasks that do location tracking for HQ do not exist, so all location is permission-based. Brax 2 does not use a network location provider for Wi-Fi triangulation, and it intercepts supple. There is no Bluetooth Low Energy Apple Mesh Network in play or any other mesh network. Because a phone like this does not reveal an identity, actors like Google are not able to assign you as an individual to a cohort. They may have raw data of what websites you're going to or what you're searching for, but without an identity, they cannot map you or assign you to a cohort, which means you cannot be targeted. This is the only way I know currently to fight back, other than to dump your mobile phone entirely. Now, there are other de-Googled OSs. However, some have not adequately solved the supple problem in location tracking or the NLP issue, so some of the location tracking solutions may be incomplete. However, all de-Googled phones do not have an identity. The first thing I want to accomplish now is to develop your awareness. Perhaps switching phones require you to think about repercussions. De-Googled phones have no Google apps, so you cannot run apps like Gmail or YouTube on them. You have to find a substitute or alternative. But clearly we need to be thinking that we have a problem here and we need to address it. Folks, I offer solutions to take away the power of big tech. The Brax 2 Privacy Phone is completely big tech free, open source, no tracking by anyone, and definitely no censorship. Yet it is completely functional for most things we do on a phone. Instead of having big tech control your internet traffic, we have a VPN solution, Bytes VPN, DNS free from tracking and a Tor option. We also have Brax Mail. Why have Google actively read your mail? There is a choice. These products support this channel and are available on my uncensored app, Brax Me. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I'll see you next time.